Every parent that has a child battling cancer can't stay there 24/7. And that's why it's essential to have both parents there. They can take turns because it builds up to the point where, for your own health, you have to go away. You have to do something else and just get your mind off it.
Welcome to Believe in Progress, the American Association for Cancer Research Foundation podcast. Join us and be inspired by the incredible stories of those who have faced cancer with strength and resilience, and the medical professionals who are working tirelessly to find new treatments and ultimately a cure. Believe in Progress isn't just about the science of cancer, it's about the human side of this disease. Together, we can make progress in the fight against cancer and bring hope to those who need it most. What does it mean to carry the memory of a loved one mile after mile, year after year, in a race that never truly ends? On this episode of Believe in Progress, the podcast brought to you by the AACR, we share a deeply moving story about love, grief, and the relentless pursuit of progress in the face of unimaginable loss. I'm your host, Mitch Stoller, Chief Philanthropic Officer at the AACR, and today I'm honored to speak with Joe Krajewski, a devoted father, runner, and advocate who has turned personal tragedy into a powerful mission. After losing his only child, Will, to osteosarcoma in 2016, Joe and his family began running in Will's memory as part of Team Willpower, raising the critical funds and awareness in the fight against cancer. Joe's story isn't just about loss, it's about carrying forward a legacy. It's about running with grief and refusing to let it define you. And it's about honoring a promise to never stop believing in progress. In this episode, we'll talk about the beautiful bond between Joe and Will, forged through running, how Hood to Coast became a living memorial and celebration of Will's life, Joe's reflections on grief, resilience, and the power of community, why cancer research, advocacy, and remembrance matter more than ever, and whether you're faced personal loss or simply want to be reminded of the strength of the human spirit, this episode will stay with you. Joe, welcome to Believe in Progress. It's an honor to meet you, and thank you so much for being with us here today.
I'm honored to be here and given the opportunity to talk about this.
Let's start off, and I'd love to learn a little bit about your son, Will, who he was, what he loved, and what made him such a special young man.
In the beginning, my wife Karen and I struggled with 5 years of infertility. We tried everything, and it was through 3 tries of in vitro fertilization that Will was conceived. So right from the get-go, this was a challenge just to have a child. From the very start, Will has always been energetic. He's always moving around nonstop, even as a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, always curious about the world, always wanting to know how things work by taking apart things. Sometimes it was not the best thing to take apart, but he would take apart a radio and we really wish he hadn't. But he was always learning and always thinking about what he wanted to do with his life. I remember when I first started running, right before that, I was in my middle 40s and I was way overweight, out of shape, not even close to being a runner. And I would watch Will as he ran around the yard. He was always into everything. Um, and I wondered, how am I going to keep up with him? How am I even going to be around for him? Because I did worry about my own mortality before he would, grow up and like graduate high school or even, fall in love and get married and all those things. So I decided to get in shape, um, starting about 20 years ago. It was running because, well, running's kind of a simple sport, right? You have a pair of shoes and you put on some shorts and shirt and you go out and you just run lots of miles and you stay consistent.
Yep.
And all along my journey, when I first started, Will was right there with me, watching everything I did. So he was fascinated by it and he wanted to help me. And after about 6 months of training, I had dropped a ton of weight and I went to Walt Disney World and ran their half marathon right off
Mm-hmm.
the start,
Yep.
13.1 miles. And that was tough, even though I had trained for about 400 miles of running. it was still, stressful. But I got through it. And I remember at the end of the race, it's like, okay, I did that. I never want to run again because that one half marathon, was like, I'm not doing
Yeah.
this.
I've run a couple halves and I've run a couple, full marathons, so I know exactly what you're saying.
That was about 62 half marathons ago.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
yeah. And what happened is at the end of the finish line, I'm walking around and I see Will and he's shouting and said, Dad, you're wicked awesome. I want to be a runner too.
Mm.
So right then and there, it's like, well, I guess I'm doing this again. And so just to have something between us, I said, okay, we'll go down this road of running and keeping it consistent and focusing. Eventually, I started to run full marathons. And in 2012, Will's 13 years old, and we're starting to run together. He wants to be an endurance runner. And particular focus is the Hood to Coast relay race from
Right.
Mount Hood to Seaside, Oregon,
Very famous run.
the mother of all relay races.
Yes.
And Will wanted part of that. So I started to train him. By that time, I knew enough about running. I became his coach. And we trained really hard for about 6 months. And we started to run races together. In a 3 month period of time, we ran 5 races. 3 of them were half marathons. We did a couple of 10K races. We even finished in first place in our age groups for one of those races. So we developed this bond together. This is our thing. This
Mhm.
is how we work together. This is how we talk to each other. It wasn't easy. There were times, just like any runner, you have those days when you don't feel like going out there and doing it. But I pushed him out there to keep him going, and I taught him all about endurance and about what it takes to keep moving forward, even when you're tired. So in August of 2012, we did the Hood to Coast relay race. The 12 runners, Will and I, and 10 friends, and it's 36 legs, so we all do 3 legs apiece. And Will did leg 12, 24, and 36.
What's the distance of the leg?
Typically, the legs are 5 to 8 miles long.
Uh-huh.
There's a couple of short ones in there, but they put big hills in there, so it's not so easy. You have to really look at the race map and the profile to understand what you're getting yourself into. And it's continuous, 30 hours straight. So there's no getting off the course. We rest in between our legs. We get about 8 hours in between with a little rest, but we're just going 30 hours. And I remember him coming in on leg 36, that anchor leg, on Saturday afternoon, and he was just having a blast. This kid was just into this, and we celebrated afterwards. I know my wife was like, I want to stand on top of the car and said, my son at 13 did Hood to Coast. What did your son do today?
Right. That must have been a great memory.
It's still there because I remember as the sun's setting, we're out there, we're just exhausted, sore everywhere, and hungry. We ate everything. We just blew like 4 or 5 thousand calories, so we
Right.
had everything. And there was just this one thing is after all that running, all that training, Will complained about his left leg hurting. And at first, well, you ran probably something like 600 miles in this past 7 or 8 months. It's not surprising you would have sore legs or sore knees or anything like that. And what happened was over the next 6 weeks, we tried different kinds of therapies. We had it x-rayed. And one of our friends happens to be a physician's assistant, and he noticed the way Will was limping along, and he said, that's not normal. There's
Mhm.
something more serious going on here. By mid-October, we were at Seattle Children's Hospital talking to oncologists. And that's when they said, after taking an MRI, they said, your child has cancer. And it was osteosarcoma in his left tibia right below his knee. Right then and there, it went from, okay, we're running to now we're going to endure cancer.
Mhm.
And all those lessons of endurance came in handy for Will to battle cancer. He kept moving forward in his life as he has always done throughout his life. He was always into things, and he still was. Even with the cancer, the chemotherapy, all the surgeries, he had a part of his tibia bone replaced twice because the first graft did not take, so he had to go through that again. And that's about a 7-hour surgery apiece. And throughout it all, Will just kept living his life. He stayed an honor student. He was in the Boy Scouts, and he went through all the ranks of the Boy Scouts all the way up to Eagle Scouts. He became a member of the Order of the Arrow, the Boy Scouts Honor Society. And through all of this, it was service to the community. His Eagle project was actually to make these IV pole little pads at the bottom. And what it was is little infants could actually, or little kids could sit on them and ride around with their IV pole. So that was his service project for his Eagle rank. And it was never one of these things where I've got cancer, I have to stop. He just kept living through all of this. And while he was doing that, I was still running,
Hmm.
and we still did hood to coast throughout, and we started to run in his honor. And that's why we changed the name of the team to Willpower,
Right.
because if Will could power through cancer, we can power through running.
What was his treatment like? What did he have to endure?
The standard treatment for osteosarcoma is the first 12 weeks you go through 3 different chemo drugs,
Hmm.
deoxyribosin, cisplatin, and methotrexate. And they're called C, D, and M. C and D are given together through a central port in your chest, so it goes right through your heart to start with, and then it circulates from there. And so those would go together, and then 2 weeks later, you would get methotrexate. After 12 weeks, they would check to see how much of the cancer had been killed off, and he got great prognosis. He had a 90+% decrease in cancer cells. And at that time, when they did the first bone graft, and they took out 5 inches of his tibia bone and replaced it. Now, in a child of his age, at the age of 13, that's about half the tibia was taken out and replaced. And it was taken out right up to just below where the ACLs would be attached.
Hmm.
So it's really close to the knee.
Hmm.
And that was a grueling operation to go through. And then after about 2 weeks of recuperation from that, you're right back onto the chemo drugs for about another 4 or 5 months. And they're constantly checking. They're doing scans every month to see what the rate of progress is against the cancer. And they call it, when you get a clear scan, it's called no evidence of disease.
Right.
And that came June 6th of 2013, and we were able to go home after that. And then the standard is every 3 months you get scanned to see if the cancer comes back.
What was his mindset like, being such an avid runner and enjoying running so much to not having that ability to do that? And what powered him through all of these treatments and things of that sort?
Will always had a saying from Star Wars: never tell me the odds, because I'm going to ignore them and continue to live my life. So no matter what the obstacle, I'm going to keep looking forward. In his first treatment, he had already signed up to go to the Boy Scout National Jamboree in West Virginia, and that was the beginning of August of 2013. So the focus right from the get-go was, I need to be at National Jamboree. No matter what all of it takes, no matter how many treatments, recovery from bone surgery, I'm going there. And at first, the hospital staff at Seattle Children's were hesitant, but Will has a lot of power in him of persuasion to essentially say, no, I'm going with you or without you. Just get me in shape to get there. And that became the focus of Seattle Children's, to get him there. They changed his treatments. They did everything they could, physical therapy, so he could attend. That was the focus. And a lot of people need to focus when they're battling cancer. Something in the future, a goal. It's just like running. If you can run and say, oh, I run every week, but if you don't have a race in front of you that you publicly commit to, how much are you going to commit to running?
Right. Right.
And if you really want to commit to it, what you say is, I'm doing a full marathon in 3 months from now, and you tell everybody on social media, well, now you have that pressure to actually perform.
Mm-hmm.
So goal settings for cancer patients is the same thing.
Hi, everyone. This is Mitch Stoller, Chief Philanthropic Officer at the AACR and the host of Believe in Progress. I hope you're enjoying today's episode. I wanted to take a quick moment to remind you that your support is vital in our fight against cancer. As we always say at the AACR, cancer research saves lives, but we cannot do that without the generous support of people like you. If you're moved by the stories and insights shared in our podcast, please consider making a donation to AACR by visiting aacr.org. Your contributions help fund essential research and provide support to those affected by cancer. And while you're here, don't forget to subscribe to the Believe in Progress podcast. By subscribing and sharing with your friends and family, you help us reach more people with these important conversations. Thank you for your support. Now let's get back to the episode. How about you and your wife dealing with unthinkable diagnosis like this? Obviously, you were an important support system for Iron Will. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Karen and I, in the first diagnosis, when it's in an appendage, it's in his leg.
Yeah.
And we were concerned. We were afraid for how much he was going to endure, because you always hear stories about chemotherapy and what it does to people. But since it was an appendage, we didn't have that life or death fear that you would think of, because it's an appendage. What would happen? You could have it amputated. It seemed like something doable versus having cancer in your brain or in your internal organs. So we didn't have that heightened fear that he was going to lose his life with the first diagnosis. And since he responded so well to treatment through the first round of this, it was more of a case of maintaining his weight, keeping him active, making sure he didn't fall into depression. It was really a focus to watch him and to be there. The level of stress was, well, anything could go wrong, but it wasn't life or death at that point. And that's the thing. For the first 2 years or so after treatment, it was more of just a case of, okay, let's make sure no evidence of disease, everything's fine. We'll just move forward life and take care of his medical condition. When you get a bone graft and chemo combined, you get osteopenia,
Mm-hmm.
which is brittle bones. Very easily for him to break any bone, just even a simple little trip. And that did happen. He fell over one time at home, and he actually split his femur because his bones had gotten so brittle.
Mm.
And it wasn't much of a fall, but he ended up having to have additional plates put in his femur now, just above his knee, for this. It became distressing when in December 1st, 2015, they found spots on his lungs.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's metastatic,
Mm-hmm.
and it's his lungs. And now it is a fear that our child is going to pass away and he doesn't have much time left. And then it becomes more of a sleepless night every single day. Is he going to pass away today? How much time does he have left? What treatments are available? And you start searching everywhere. You go across the internet looking at all sorts of clinical trials.
Mm-hmm.
You're willing to travel anywhere. It doesn't matter. We'll go anywhere in the world that has promise. It becomes that kind of a desperation. And then there's the depression of what would life be after Will.
Right.
At this time, he's almost 17 in December of 2015. And we're just thinking, okay, does he make his birthday, which is March 27th? Does he even make the year? And this became a bigger and bigger concern as they took more scans, they could see it spreading. And the second round of cancer, the cancer has become immune to whatever you did before. So now it's harsher chemotherapies at first, and then you start experimenting with clinical trials. What would work? Um, so we pulled out all the stops. I think the toughest thing is I'm an engineer, and on my own, I looked at the disease rate of progression that he was experiencing. And I actually applied statistical analysis to this. And I realized in December of 2015 that unless we found an effective treatment, he would probably not see the next September. And he passed away on August 22nd.
Mm. Joe, did you go out of state for clinical trials, or did you not find any matches that would, show promise?
We were fortunate enough that they had clinical trials at Seattle Children's.
Hmm.
So we would travel up there. We tried two of them. We tried and it was a tricky thing because we had Keytruda as one option
Yep.
and another one called denosisab. And the problem is denosisab was limited by age. That if we didn't try that one first, Will would age out, and then you'd
Hmm.
only be left with the Keytruda. But the Keytruda by that time in 2016 had already been proven effective. The most notable case is Jimmy Carter taking it in his 90s.
Hmm.
He had 2 or 3 doses, and the cancer was just gone. So we had a choice, and it's tough for non-medical parents to understand all of this, but we went for the denosisab figuring, well, we'll have 2 chances. We'll try that, and if that doesn't work, we could use Keytruda. And that's the path we went on. Denosisab was completely ineffective,
Hmm.
and his cancer actually accelerated in the month that we tried that one. And then Keytruda, by then, his right lung was already filled with tumors and was completely useless.
Mm.
So we were starting late with Keytruda, and he only got 1 dose of it because in a clinical trial they look at how much toxicity is built up in your liver,
Right.
and he just was over the border,
Uh,
and they would not budge. And it's
mm.
like it's really close. Can't we just
Right.
go? I mean, and
They
they wouldn't
wouldn't
do
go
it.
for it. Yeah. Yeah.
No.
Joe, tell me that quote again from Star Wars. It sounds like that quote really sums up Will.
Oh yeah, never tell me the odds because I'm going to live my life anyways. But that first part is right from Star Wars, Han Solo.
Love it. Love it. Let's chat a little bit about team willpower and the legacy of advocacy. So even in the wake of Will's passing, you continued to run Hood to Coast. Tell me why that was so important to you and your family.
Will passes away on August 22nd. It's the week of Hood to Coast. 4 days later, we ran Hood to Coast. It started on that Friday. And there was no question after Will passed away, my wife and I looked at each other and said, you have to run Hood to Coast. There was no debate, there was nothing. You have to do this. And that first one was important as a way to honor his life. And that one was emotional because the entire team knew Will. They had seen him a couple of years before at the races at the finish lines and things like that. So they knew who he was. And all of us just focused, let's get this done. There are a lot of other teams. I know plenty of them by this time. I had done some fundraising for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society's team in training,
Hmm.
ran with them for many years to do the Portland Marathon, and I also became one of the marathon coaches. And a lot of those people end up doing Hood to Coast as well. And all those teams, when they saw us, they supported us.
Wow.
I remember in the middle of the night running my second leg, which is always usually about 1 o'clock in the morning, running out towards running away from Portland. And I remember on the freeway in big chalk letters it said Willpower.
You had no idea?
No idea. And it's just another team.
Oh,
Other teams painted Willpower on their arms, their legs.
how did it make you feel?
Amazing, emotional when the race finished
Hmm.
because it's okay. The race is over. You've celebrated, but then grief comes back because he's not here.
Were you still running while he was dealing with his cancer?
Yes, I used it as a form of stress relief to go out and just get away from things.
Yep.
Everybody needs a break. Every parent that has a child battling cancer can't stay there 24/7, and that's why it's essential to have both parents there. They can take turns because it builds up to the point where, for your own health, you have to go away. You have to do something else and just get your mind off it.
Did he want you to run?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We did expand out to other relay races. We did another endurance race called the Cascade Lakes Relay. It's a much more grueling race in the Cascade Mountains. It's 216 miles above 4,000 feet in elevation. Same idea.
What's the legs on that? The relay legs on that?
In one of those legs, you're running up one of the Cascade Mountains called Mount Bachelor. It goes from 3,000 feet up to 6,000 feet in 5 miles.
Oh boy.
Yeah, nobody wants to do that. It's like draw the
Right.
short straw and you're it.
Yeah. Have you run Ragnar?
Yes, I have. I've run Ragnar Pacific Northwest a couple of times, and I have also run, when they had it, Ragnar the Big Island in Hawaii.
Right.
That was even more grueling than the rest of them. My first race, if you know about the Big Island, the Hilo side is incredibly humid. It's a tropical place. I ran 11 miles on that side in that humidity and heat. At night, we ran up, I think it was Mauna Loa. It got so high up, it was a short run, but it started to snow. It was the oddest thing. I'm in
Wow.
Hawaii, it's snowing.
Right. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Team Willpower has raised tens of thousands of dollars for cancer research. What has it meant to see Will's story continue to inspire for cancer research?
It's amazing to see how far it has spread. There are at least a dozen people around who have tattooed Willpower on their arms or their legs. 2014, we actually were invited by the 4th Airlift of the United States Air Force up to Base Lewis McChord. They made him a pilot for the day. And after he passed away, because they really enjoyed showing him their planes and showing him simulators and all this, and he got into it. After he passed away, um, they took some of his ashes and they put it into their community room at the base. So his ashes and pictures of him are right there. And that's where they have social events. They also flew missions with Will's ashes in the cockpit around the world. So
Amazing.
they've taken them everywhere.
So, are you still raising money for hospitals or academic centers?
We consistently raise money for the Ronald McDonald House,
Hmm.
a place for people and families to stay. It is a wonderful organization, so we raise money for them. We also fill up their food pantry with what they need. Every year we do that. Um, Raising money for the Providence Cancer Center, we typically will do every other year because the minimum funding requirements are pretty high, and we're not the best fundraisers necessarily. We don't have enough corporate sponsorships or things like that. So we're able to do $20,000 to $24,000 every 2 years. We're approaching over $100,000 by this point.
That's fantastic. Thank you for doing that. We'll have to get you to Philadelphia to run in our Philadelphia Marathon, which AACR has been a charity partner for many, many years. But I think it's fantastic that you and your friends and your family have kept Iron Will's legacy alive, through running. In your writing, you described the grief of losing Will. How has writing helped you process this experience?
Writing a memoir has helped me work through grief, work through an understanding of what life is, um, and it is therapy. Some people go to see someone. I write down what I'm feeling, and sometimes in purposely writing a memoir about all these experiences, I discover new things about myself and about this whole cancer journey that we've been on and continue to be on. So it's very therapeutic for me. Um, it's a great way to write your feelings out and really deal with it. Um, Grief doesn't end, and there are times when even just little trigger things. You can see a family with a little kid, and you can remind you of Will, and that could hurt.
What do you want other parents, especially those who have experienced loss, to know? Or what kind of message do you have to them?
One of my friends had a quote, um, which is pretty poignant. We don't get to determine the length of our lives. That's not up to us. But what we do get to do is choose how we spend our days. And so grief is not going to end. You have to shut out the noise of people saying it's been long enough. You have to move on. You don't move on from it. You have to find a way to cope with it and understand that you're never going to get rid of it, that you need coping mechanisms to get through this. The best way I've found for people and what I've seen a lot of bereaved parents do is they do what I do. They start fundraising. Some have created their own charities to help cancer research. Some have become, more directly involved in organizations already out there. Eventually, some of them have been ambitious enough and focused enough. They've gone on to be board of director members and really gone all in. And that's the thing you want to do. You want to try to stay away from isolating yourself from the rest of the world. It can be embittering if you see other kids growing up your child's age. It can hurt, but understand, appreciate and celebrate that their kids are still here, and don't get so embittered in your own loss. Always think positive about life and about other people around you, and don't turn to anything dark. There's a dark side to all of us. There have been people who have turned to alcohol and drugs, sometimes violence, suicidal thoughts. That's those are typical things that could be tempting. But your life is worth more than that, and your child doesn't want you to go down those roads.
What keeps you going? What keeps you running, keep training? And, running, again, I remember myself, running and training for a marathon. You've got to put a lot of miles in, and, you've got to have a lot of positive attitude to do that. Is will your motivation, and obviously fitness as well?
It's fitness, but it's primarily a way to talk to Will and to bond with him still. Every race I do, every run I do, I carry a jar of his ashes, a small little jar,
Okay.
and he's always there. And it's one of these things that, in order to endure training for a marathon, there's a lot of lonely miles out there.
Oh, yeah.
And so what you can do is I think about Will's life, and it's like, well, he kept going with all those awful things going on to him, and he didn't stop. Who am I to stop running? It's like, I want to do this for physical fitness to run long into the future, so I can have a coping mechanism and a bonding way to my son.
Our podcast, we named "Believe in Progress." There's a number of reasons why I picked that, and I love that. What does that phrase mean to you personally? Believe in progress.
Believe in that we're working our way towards a day when the cancer won't be this major disease with such a low survival rate, that we'll be able to get to a point where, okay, you have cancer, we have a method to 100% get rid of it. Because right now we're not anywhere near that, especially with pediatric cancers, in particular metastatic cancers, because they've already developed that resistance to whatever you did before, so you run out of options. But believing in that we're going to get to something, I believe that things like immunology are huge,
Right.
and we're getting better and better at that all the time.
We are. I love that answer. Love that answer. So if Will was here today and saw everything you've done in his name, what do you think he'd say?
He's partly introvert, extrovert, depending on if he's doing something. I think that I'm doing this in his name, that privately he would be very happy with this, but publicly he would shy away because it's like, why are you making this all about me?
Right.
He's not that narcissistic person that needs to be the center of the stage. He'd rather, like, yeah, that's really nice, raise raise funds, but don't make me the center of attention all the time.
I'm very inspired by your story and what you've done, what you and your family have done and continue to do. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for what you've done for cancer research and maintaining that legacy of your son Will. Joe, thank you for your honesty, your strength, and for sharing Will's story with us today. Your journey is a powerful reminder that while grief never truly ends, neither does love. And in that love, there's progress, one step, 1 mile, one memory at a time. To our listeners, if you've been moved by Joe and Will's story, we invite you to take action. Support childhood cancer research visiting AACR.org. Share this episode with someone who needs a reminder of the power of love and resilience. And above all, remember, cancer research saves lives. Every dollar raised, every story told, and every life honored brings us closer to the breakthroughs we need. Thank you for listening to Believe in Progress. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast and stay tuned for more stories of strength, science, and hope. This episode is produced by College Cast LLC. And remember, cancer research saves lives.